Good morning. I'm going to try and go through a quick review of the Topic 4 practice test, which is in accelerated math, the Topic 6 practice test. We already did this in class, but this is the review for anybody who was absent or just needs a fresh refresher. Number 1 says choose the correct solution to each equation. So you have two options here. You can either take those numbers and plug them in for x, or you can use your work shown paper like we discussed in class and solve for x and then go back and see if it was the answer choice. So if I have 7x equals 63, I'm going to go over to my work shown paper and I'm going to put the 7x equals 63. Right. Let's see. And then we discussed in class that in order to solve equations, we should first show a railroad track because that helps us keep our equation balanced. A number against a letter is multiplication, and our goal is to get the letter, the variable, alone. So if we're using multiplication here, we need to use the inverse to undo it, which is to divide. The inverse of multiply is divide. So the inverse operations will cancel each other out and leave just the variable on the left side, and then 63 divided by 7 is 9. So I can come back over here and say, all right, well that part is B. The other way you could have checked that is where your x was, tried the 9 to see if it equals 63, and if it does, and that's a true statement, then that was the answer. You could also try it with 3.5. Alright, the next one, x minus 2 1/4 equals 3 1/8. So we're going to go ahead and railroad track this. Our goal is to get the x alone, so we're going to do the inverse of whatever is currently happening. Right now it's subtracting 2 1/4, so the inverse is to add 2 1/4. We're going to do that to both sides of the railroad track to keep it balanced. The inverses are going to cancel out, leave behind the x. But I can't add 3 1/8 plus 2 1/4 because I don't have a common denominator. The 8 and the 4 don't match. A quick way to make them match is to do 4 times 2. And if I multiply the denominator by 2, I have to multiply the numerator by 2. So that 3 1/8 stays the same. The whole number stays the same, but this becomes 2 8s instead of 1/4. So now 1/8 plus 2 8s is 3 8s, and a whole 3 plus a whole 2 is 5 8s. When I go back to the test, that was not an answer option, so I'm going to use neither. Next, we have x over 4 equals 2.25. I'm going to set up my railroad tracks, identify my variable, which is x. Right now it's over 4, and we know that fraction lines are just like division symbols. So this is like x dividing by 4. So the inverse is going to be to multiply by 4. In class, we talked about using parentheses on both sides to indicate multiplication because if you use the x for the multiplication sign, it can be confused with a variable x. So just like before, our inverses are going to cancel out, and now we just need to do 2.25 times 4, which students can use their online calculator for that, and we get 9. Alright, next we have x minus 1.58 equals 1.92. Setting up our railroad tracks, identifying our variable x. What's happening to it currently is subtracting 1.58, so we're going to do the inverse, and we're going to add 1.58. If we do it to the left, we also do it to the right to keep our equation balanced. The inverses cancel out and make 0, so that x is left alone, and when we actually add those together, we get 3.5. And then the last part of number 1 is 4 1/3 plus x equals 7 5/6. We're going to set up our railroad tracks over our equal sign, identify our variable, which is x. X is currently adding 4 1/3, so the inverse would be to subtract out 4 1/3 from both sides. The inverses are going to cancel and leave behind the x. And I'm going to go ahead and write these out the way they are right now because I can't do any subtraction until my denominators match. A quick way to make the match would be to do 3 times 2, which creates that 6 on the bottom. If we multiply the denominator, we have to multiply the numerator. So the 1/3 is now 2 over 6, which works out for us because now 5 6 minus 2 6 is 3 6. 7 minus 4 is 3. So while that's not an answer option on the test, you might notice that you could reduce this by dividing them both by 3 and get 3 1/2, which is on the test. So be really careful with your fractions if they could be reduced. Okay, I'm going to go back to the test now. Number 2, it tells you to use the weight machines at a health club, you must be at least 12 years old. So I'm saying at least. If A represents age in years, which of the following inequalities represents the solution? If you can be at least 12, that means you can be 12 or you can be older than 12 to use the machine. So that's going to be D, which is greater than or equal to. Number 3, the symbol they're using is less than, so M is less than 4. I can already tell that A is incorrect because the dot's on 3, not 4. And D is incorrect because the dot's on 5, not 4. Now these are both on 4, but the shaded on this one is to the numbers that are less than 4, so that's our correct answer. Whereas on this one, the shading is going towards the larger numbers. Reminder, if your symbol is less than or equal to, like that, your dot should be a closed dot, whereas this one's open because it's plain less than, and 4 cannot be the answer. Alright, number 4, I did give you a spot to work number 4 out on your work shown paper, but it's okay if you want to do it on the test if it's something similar to this. Because this is x minus 1 is less than 4, select all that apply. So what I did is I went ahead and did my work here. If these are all the x's, then they all need to subtract 1. Negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. Is negative 2 less than 4? Yeah, it is. So that's an answer, a solution. 5 minus 1 is 4. Is 4 less than 4? No, it's equal to, but that does not have the or equal to line. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 is less than 4, so that's a solution. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. That's less than 4, so yes, that's a solution. 6 minus 1 is 5. 5 is not less than 4, so not a solution. Alright, we have Alexis writing 28 minus 8 equals 20, and then she rewrote it like this. We're going to decide if it's balanced or not. The change she made is she added q to the left and she subtracted q from the right. That means it's not balanced because you have to be making the exact same change. For example, when we did our work earlier, we divided by 7 on both sides. It has to be exactly the same. So because she added q on one side but subtracted on the other, that means they're not balanced because you can't add on one side and subtract on the other. It either needs to be both adding or both subtracting. Alright, the middle school drama club is planning a picnic. The club wants to stay below their budget for $150 for food for the picnic. If C represents the cost the drama club can spend on the picnic, which inequality represents it? Below is less than because they don't say that they're okay with spending $150. They say they want to stay below it or under it, so we need to be less than $150 for our total. Number 7, the sum of 20 and a number x equals negative 22. So we know that sum is adding. We know it needs to equal negative 22. So the only possible option is B. Then we're going to take that answer and we're going to go to our work shown paper. This is number 7. And we're going to solve 20 plus x equals negative 22. Starting out with our railroad tracks, we're going to identify the x, which is the variable, and right now it's adding 20, so we're going to do the inverse. We're going to subtract 20 from both sides to keep it balanced. We're going to cancel out the inverses, which leave behind the x. And negative 22 minus 20 is negative 42. That tends to be one that tricks people, so make sure that you're double checking yourself in your online calculator. Number 8, Sam earns $5 each day for dog sitting. After dog sitting for D days, he earns $45. How much he earns is like his total. If you do it for $5 each day, that's multiplying by how many days you do it, because 1 day is $5, 2 days $10, 3 days $15. So you're doing $5 times however many days, and it tells us to use D for days. So if I come down to my answer choices, these are the only two with multiplication, but B is the correct one because you're doing $5 times the day equals $45 total. And remember, a number against the letter is multiplying. So now that we have that, we're going to go to our work shown paper for number 8 and solve 5D equals 45. We know that 5D means multiply 5 times D, so we're going to do the inverse and we're going to divide it on both sides. The inverses cancel out and just leave the division on the right, which makes D equal 9. Number 9, the maximum height h that's allowed on an amusement park ride is 55 inches. Which inequality represents this situation? So maximum is the very tallest you can be. You can't be taller than that. So it needs to be less than or equal to. You can be 55 or you can be less than 55. What is the value of x in the equation? So we're going to have to solve x minus 3/4 equals 1.5. We're going to use our railroad tracks, and where it was subtracting 3/4, we're going to now add 3/4. That way the x becomes alone. We have to do it to both sides and cancel out the inverses. So this is 1.5 plus 3/4, but we know by now we can't add without a common denominator. A quick way to do that, well, 2 times 2 equals 4. So I'm also going to multiply my numerator. And I'm going to rewrite this. 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. So now that that's gone, we're going to go ahead and add the fractions. 2/4 plus 3/4 is 5/4. That whole number 1 doesn't have another whole number, but this is not okay for an answer because the 5 is larger than the 4. So 4 goes into 5 one whole time, which turns that 1 into a 2. If I take 4 out of the top, we have 1 left over. Keep that common denominator. So 2 1/4 is our final answer there. Alright, 11 says a minus 7 equals negative 11. So once again, railroad tracks. If a is subtracting 7, then we're going to do the inverse. We're going to add 7, and we're going to do it on both sides, canceling out the inverses. Negative 11 plus 7 is negative 4. Always double check yourself on your online calculator for the basic adding or subtracting of integers to make sure you have your right symbol. Alright, and our last one is p over 6 equals negative 3. We're going to railroad track this, and we're going to remember from earlier that a p over 6 is a p divided by 6. The inverse of dividing by 6 is to multiply by 6, which we showed with parentheses earlier, so that we didn't get an x for multiplication symbol confused with our variable. Our inverse is canceled out and left behind a p. Negative 3 times 6 is negative 18. So you just saw the work shown paper paired next to the test, and that's what would be expected on test day. And also, every question has a matching IXL that can be completed optionally for extra practice on those types of problems.